Captain David Robertson's knuckles were white as he gripped the armrests of his command chair, his steely gaze fixed on the view screen, filled with the impossible sight before him. 800,000 Kobali battleships hung in space, a swarm of gleaming silver daggers poised to stab at the heart of humanity's colony on New Terra. The Kobali's religious zealotry had driven them to commit unspeakable atrocities against humans, branding them as infidels deserving of annihilation. Intelligence reports warned this fleet was preparing for a devastating surprise attack to wipe out New Terra's 10 million civilians. As the sole defender on the scene, Robertson faced a crushing choice. The main human fleet was days away. New Terra's defenses were useless against such overwhelming force. He could flee and abandon millions to their fate, or he could attempt a suicidal delaying action to buy time for reinforcements. Robertson's jaw tightened as he activated the experimental weapons aboard his stealth frigate, the ISS Phantom. "Damn the odds," he growled to his crew. "We can't let those Kobali bastards butcher millions. We hold the line, no matter the cost. We make them bleed for every inch. The Phantom will live up to her name. We'll strike from the shadows, make them pay in blood for their arrogance in attacking us." He stabbed commands into his console, the Phantom surging toward the amassed enemy. One human ship against a zealous alien horde fighting for the survival of millions. Robertson slammed his fist on the control panel. "Activate the cloaking device." The Phantom shimmered and vanished from view, invisible to the naked eye and undetectable by the Kobali's sensors. Robertson guided his ship into the heart of the enemy formation. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he narrowly avoided scraping against the massive Kobali battleships. "Deploy the proximity mines," Robertson ordered once the Phantom reached the fleet center. A series of metallic spheres silently detached from the Phantom's hull and magnetically clamped onto dozens of Kobali ships. A wolfish grin spread across Robertson's face. He jabbed the detonator button. A heartbeat later, the void of space lit up with blossoming fireballs. The mines exploded in a devastating chain reaction, tearing through over 100 Kobali vessels. Twisted metal and debris spun through the vacuum. Frantic Kobali chatter filled the comms. "This is Fleet Commander Nesso. All ships report in. I want a status report and a casualty count immediately." Robertson seized the momentary disarray. "Fire quantum torpedoes. Target their command ship." A volley of glowing projectiles streaked from the Phantom, slamming into the Kobali flagship's communications array and weapons systems. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull. Alarms blared on the Phantom's bridge. "Captain, our cloak is down. They've spotted us." Robertson clenched his jaw. The Kobali would be out for blood now. He had to outmaneuver their furious reprisal, whittle down their numbers, and shatter their confidence. As the battleships closed in, Robertson pictured his wife and daughter huddled in a shelter down on New Terra. They were depending on him to protect them and everyone else from the Kobali's genocidal campaign. This was no time for doubt or hesitation. He would gladly sacrifice himself, if that's what it took to keep his loved ones and his home safe. The dazzling light of plasma cannon blasts and bursting metal lit up the Phantom's cockpit. Robertson banked hard, pushing the engines to their limits as he raced toward the nearest asteroid field. "We can lose them in there and give the cloak time to recharge," he shouted to his rattled crew. Glancing at his scopes, his stomach dropped. "Hold on, we've got incoming." A massive Kobali dreadnought surged out from behind a tumbling planetoid, its weapons already spewing deadly energy at the Phantom. Robertson jerked the controls, barely managing to evade the searing barrage. The near miss rocked the ship, alarms blaring as the engines sputtered and died. "Shit! Engines are hit. We're a sitting duck," the pilot reported, panic edging into his voice. Robertson gritted his teeth, mind racing. They couldn't outrun the dreadnought now. Fighting was suicide. Unless... Plot a course straight for that bastard. Override the safeties and channel everything to the thrusters. "Do it!" Robertson barked. "We're going to play chicken with these zealots." The crew obeyed, the Phantom lurching forward on a kamikaze run as the reactor strained at the sudden power surge. The dreadnought loomed ahead. its guns glowing as it prepared to finish them off. At the last second, Robertson hammered the missile controls. A dozen nuclear warheads streaked out, arcing towards the Kobali bridge. He wrenched the stick, flipping the Phantom up and over. The warheads struck home. A miniature sun blossomed, the shockwaves slamming into the Phantom and sending it tumbling. Robertson fought the controls, aiming for a nearby asteroid. They slid into its shadow just as the dreadnought emerged from the fading blast, its bridge shattered and leaking atmosphere. It reeled drunkenly, then went dark and still. "Find us a place to set down for repairs, somewhere the Kobali won't spot us." He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion hitting him like a hammer. Taiping from the comms drew his eye, an encrypted message from New Terra Command. His gambit had worked. Civilians were evacuating and defenses were going up. They urged him to return at once. Robertson shook his head. The Kobali were still out there. They'd never stop hunting humanity so long as they had the means. He couldn't abandon this fight yet, not while he still drew breath. "There, that big pockmarked rock. Take us in, nice and easy." He stood, shedding his flight suit and reaching for an EVA rig. "I'll get the engines back online and the cloak recharged. Keep an eye on the long-range sensors, and let me know if our friends out there get too close for comfort." As the Phantom settled onto the rough asteroid with a crunch, Robertson trudged to the airlock, tools in hand. He cycled the hatch and stepped out into the silent void, the Phantom's damage even more stark under the harsh light of the distant sun. With a sigh, he set to work, trying to ignore the looming sense that his time was fast running out. Robertson hauled himself back into the Phantom's airlock, sealing it behind him with a hiss. Doffing his EVA suit, he strode onto the bridge where his crew waited anxiously. "Engines and cloak are back online," he reported, dropping into the command chair. "Let's get the hell off this rock and finish what we started." His hands flew over the controls, firing maneuvering thrusters to lift the Phantom from the asteroid's surface. Suddenly, proximity alarms blared. "Cloak us and set down behind that ridge," he ordered. "I'm going out there. If I can take out that scout, maybe we can buy ourselves a little more time." Ignoring his crew's protests, Robertson donned his EVA suit again and cycled the airlock. The asteroid's low gravity made crossing the rugged terrain almost effortless. He bounded from rock to rock, rifle in hand, zeroing in on the scout's landing zone. Reaching the ridge, he peered over the edge. Below, the boxy Kobali vessel sat in a cloud of settling dust. A squad of soldiers disembarked, spreading out in a standard search pattern. Robertson's eyes narrowed as he recognized the ornate armor of the squad leader, Fleet Commander Nesso. Nesso gestured angrily, his augmented voice booming across the open channel. "I want that human ship found. Scour every crater if you have to, but Robertson does not leave this asteroid alive." Robertson's mind raced. Nesso's presence was a rare opportunity. If he could eliminate the fanatical fleet commander here and now, it would throw the Kobali forces into disarray. Moving quickly, Robertson planted a ring of demo charges around the scout ship. He positioned himself atop the ridge, rifle aimed squarely at Nesso's head. With slow, even breaths, he squeezed the trigger. Nesso's shields flared as the hypersonic slug slammed home. The fleet commander staggered, spinning to face his attacker. Robertson fired again and again, drawing Nesso away from his ship and his squad. Nesso charged up the ridge, an enraged roar distorted by his helmet speakers. Robertson tossed his spent rifle aside and thumbed the detonator. The demo charges exploded, utterly vaporizing the scout ship and sending the Kobali squad flying. Nesso barely flinched, closing the distance with murderous intent. Robertson met his charge head-on. They crashed together, servos whining as each sought to overpower the other. Nesso's augmented strength was fearsome, but Robertson's honed skills gave him a slight edge. A swift knee to the midsection, an elbow strike to the temple, a grapple and throw. The two leaders grappled across the asteroid's surface, decades of enmity fueling every blow. In the end, it was Robertson who stood victorious. Nesso lay broken and unconscious at his feet, his armor shattered. Robertson allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction before tapping his comms. "Phantom, I need extraction at my position," he panted, "and prep for immediate dust-off." As the welcome sight of his ship rose over the asteroid's horizon, Robertson knew their mission was far from over. But with NATO removed from play, they'd struck a critical blow. The Kobali would be in chaos. It was a chance they had to seize. He stepped aboard the Phantom, shedding his battered EVA suit. "Get us out of here," he told the crew, "and plot a course for the Kobali flagship. It's time we took this fight right to their doorstep." As the Phantom sped away from the crippled Kobali dreadnought, a blinking light on the comms panel caught Robertson's eye. He slapped the button, the static-filled voice of a New Terra defense officer filling the cockpit. "Captain Robertson, this is New Terra Command. We have an emergency situation. A Kobali infiltration team has seized control of our main power plant. They're trying to overload the reactor core. If they succeed, the explosion will wipe out the entire colony." Robertson's blood ran cold. Millions of lives hung in the balance. "Understood, Command. We're on our way." He whirled to face his pilot. "Get us to New Terra now. Divert everything you can to the engines." The Phantom banked hard, racing towards the imperiled colony. As they approached, the sensor officer called out, "Sir, I'm detecting multiple Kobali battleships moving to intercept. They're powering up weapons." Robertson studied the tactical display, the cogs turning in his mind. They couldn't afford a prolonged firefight, not with the reactor at risk. His eyes fell on the experimental phase shift drive, a dangerous and untested technology. It was now or never. "Plot a course straight through their formation," he ordered. "Stand by to engage the phase shift drive on my mark." The pilot blanched but obeyed, aiming the Phantom directly at the center of the Kobali line. The battleships loomed larger, their cannons glowing with deadly energy. "Steady, steady, Mark, activate phase shift now." A shimmering field enveloped the Phantom, an instant before the Kobali opened fire. The beams and projectiles passed harmlessly through the frigate's hull as it shot through the formation, the phase shift rendering it incorporeal. Shouts of confusion and rage echoed over the comms as the Phantom emerged unscathed on the other side, streaking towards the billowing smoke of the power plant. "Take us down on the reactor roof," Robertson commanded, already moving towards the armory. "I'm going in." He grabbed a pulse rifle and slung a bandolier of EMP grenades over his shoulder. As the Phantom touched down, he keyed the ramp controls and charged down into the chaos. The reactor room was a scene from hell, flames licking at the walls and sparks cascading from ruptured conduits. A dozen Kobali stood guard over a group of terrified technicians, while others worked feverishly at the reactor controls. Robertson didn't hesitate. He hurled an EMP grenade into their midst, the pulse frying their electronics and shields. Before they could recover, he opened up with his rifle, downing two with precision headshots. The Kobali returned fire, plasma bolts sizzling past as Robertson dove for cover. He popped up to squeeze off shots, dropping infiltrators with each pull of the trigger. A plasma bolt seared his shoulder, but he pushed through the pain, advancing relentlessly. His EMP grenades wreaked havoc, disabling Kobali weapons and equipment. Finally, only one remained, frantically stabbing at the reactor controls. Robertson charged, rifle barking. The Kobali fell, the control panel sparking and dead. His hands flew over the interfaces, rerouting power, bypassing fused circuits, realigning magnetic bottles. Sweat poured down his face as he worked, the reactor groaning and shuddering. With a final keystroke, the reactor stabilized, the core temperature dropping back into the green. Robertson sagged against the panel, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He'd done it. The colony was safe for now. But as he looked out at the burning cityscape, the distant flashes of the Kobali fleet still battling New Terra's defenders, he knew this fight was far from finished. He still had work to do. Robertson burst onto the Phantom's bridge, his heart still pounding from the desperate battle in the power plant. But as he stared out the view screen, his blood ran cold. A massive Kobali troop transport descended through the clouds, its hull bristling with armaments. Thousands of heavily armed soldiers prepared to unleash hell upon the unsuspecting colony below. "Cloak us now," Robertson barked, leaping into the pilot's seat. "We've got to stop that transport before those bastards make planetfall." The Phantom shimmered and vanished from view. Robertson guided the invisible ship just meters above the colony's rooftops, honing in on the troop transport's landing zone near the main settlement. As the ship descended, ramps extended, and soldiers began to disembark. Cobbly boots thudded onto new Terran soil. Robertson's fingers flew across the weapons console. "All right, you sons of bitches," he growled. "Time for a little surprise." The Phantom decloaked directly above the transport, its plasma cannons already glowing with deadly charge. Robertson hammered the trigger. Searing energy blasts raked across the Cobbly ranks, flash-boiling armor, and sending soldiers flying. Screams and confusion filled the comms as the troops scrambled for cover that didn't exist. Robertson didn't let up, strafing the landing zone with unrelenting plasma fire. The Phantom swooped down, crushing fleeing soldiers beneath its armored hull. The ship shuddered as return fire sparked across its shields. "Shields at 60%, the tactical officer shouted. "Maintain fire," Robertson gritted, spinning the ship to present fresh armor. He targeted the transport's engines, pouring streams of superheated plasma into the thrusters until they detonated in a chain of explosions. The transport listed, belching smoke and flame. The ramps buckled as soldiers fought to escape the burning wreckage. Robertson activated the Phantom's external speakers. "This is Captain Robertson of the ISS Phantom. Lay down your arms and surrender, or I'll send you all straight to hell." Scattered weapons fire was his only answer. "Have it your way," Robertson muttered. He set the Phantom down amid the chaos, its hull providing cover as he grabbed his rifle and hit the ramp controls. The smell of burnt metal and charred flesh assaulted him as he charged down the ramp, rifle barking. Cobbly soldiers fell before his onslaught, their energy bolts sparking ineffectually off his combat shields. Robertson moved methodically through their ranks, painting the ground with neon blood. Soon only the moans of the wounded and the crackling of flames filled the air. Robertson paused to reload, sweat dripping into his eyes when the sound of thrusters sent his gaze skyward. The troop transport was lifting off, attempting to escape. "Oh, no, you don't," Robertson snarled, sprinting back into the Phantom. His hands flew across the controls, the Phantom leaping into the air in pursuit. He activated the hacking suite, the console flickering with Cobbly script as he fought through their firewalls. With a final keystroke, he seized control of the transport's navigation, plotting a new course and locking out the controls. "Let's see how your fleet likes a taste of their own medicine," he spat, angling the Phantom to chase the transport into orbit. As they breached the atmosphere, the waiting Cobbly fleet filled the view screen. The hijacked transport barreled towards their center, its collision course set. Energy bolts from the fleet saturated the sky, the Cobbly firing frantically to destroy the rogue ship. Robertson sent the Phantom into a dizzying spiral, drawing their fire, plasma sizzling past the canopy. Warnings blared as the shields drained to critical levels. "Come on, you bastards, just a little more." The transport entered the fleet's heart, a gleaming arrow aimed at the command ship. Too late, the Cobbly realized their peril. The transport smashed into the command ship's hull, a miniature supernova erupting from the impact. The shockwave slammed into the fleet, scattering ships like toys. Robertson pounced on their disarray. Quantum torpedoes burst from the Phantom, homing in on the damaged ships, blossoming into spheres of destruction. Cobbly vessels spun and burned, holed by the antimatter warheads, their formations shattered. A crackle of static resolved into a voice on the comms. "Captain Robertson, this is New Terra Defense Command. Reinforcements have arrived. Repeat, reinforcements have arrived. The Fifth Fleet is engaging the Cobbly forces." Fresh explosions lit the battlefield as human warships dropped out of warp, lances of energy and missiles hammering into the beleaguered Cobbly. The tide had turned. Robertson sagged back in his seat, the adrenaline fading into fatigue. They'd done it. They'd bought New Terra a chance, and the price had been paid in Cobbly blood. But even as the Phantom soared through the frenetic space battle, Robertson couldn't quell the unease churning in his gut. The Kobali had come too close this time, and fanatics like Nesso seldom gave up after a single defeat. He had a sinking feeling that this war was far from over, and before it ended, he might be called upon to sacrifice more than he ever imagined. But that was a worry for another day. For now there were Kobali that needed killing. Robertson rolled his shoulders and accelerated into the firefight, guns blazing. As the dazzling light of plasma cannon blasts and bursting metal lit up the Phantom's cockpit, a blinking transmission alert caught Robertson's attention. He slapped the button, a garbled voice filling the comms. "Captain Robertson, human intelligence here. We've intercepted Kobali comms chatter about a secret planet-killing battle station hidden in the Oort Nebula. If they deploy it, New Terra and the human resistance are finished." Robertson's eyes narrowed. "Send me the coordinates," he growled, already plotting a course. "I'll take care of it." The Phantom peeled away from the chaotic space battle, its engines flaring, as Robertson pushed the ship to maximum speed. The ship plunged into the swirling indigo clouds of the nebula, sensor arrays probing the ionized gases for any sign of the Kobali weapon. Suddenly, a massive energy signature blazed across the displays. Robertson's jaw clenched as the battle station loomed out of the mists, a monstrous metal sphere bristling with plasma turrets and rippling with energy shielding. It dwarfed the Phantom like an elephant standing over an ant. Robertson's mind raced, analyzing the station's defenses. A frontal assault would be suicide. His eyes fell on a series of colossal exhaust ports pockmarking the station's surface, each one glowing cherry red as they vented heat from the weapon's reactor core. A plan crystallized in his thoughts. A full spread of quantum torpedoes right down one of those ports could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction in the reactor. With deft inputs, Robertson swung the Phantom into an attack position, targeting algorithms locking onto the largest port. Proximity alert screamed as a swarm of Kobali fighters boiled out from behind the battle station, plasma cannons spitting fire. Robertson wrenched the stick, sending the Phantom into a dizzying spiral, weaving between the lethal energy bolts. The Phantom's own guns roared to life, spitting armor-piercing shells into the Kobali formation. Fighters spun and exploded, shrapnel pinging off the Phantom's hull. Robertson jinked and juked, a snarl fixed on his lips as he outmaneuvered the enemy craft. Emerald plasma blasts crisscrossed the void, ionized nebula gases, scattering the deadly light in disorienting patterns. Robertson flew by instinct, rolling and banking, the G-forces crushing him back into his seat. One by one, the Kobali fighters vanished in blossoms of flame, until only the Phantom remained. Wrenching the ship back towards the battle station, Robertson's eyes widened in dismay. A seething ball of crimson energy was growing at the tip of the station's main weapon, a planet-killing lance preparing to fire. Robertson slammed the throttle to full, the Phantom leaping forward on a collision course with the exhaust port. The sphere of destruction grew larger, trembling with barely contained power. With a wordless yell, Robertson hammered the torpedo launch button, sending a full salvo of quantum warheads screaming into the port's hellish maw. He yanked back on the stick, standing the Phantom on its tail as he fired the retros, desperate to clear the blast radius. The battle station vanished in an apocalyptic fireball, the chain reaction of ruptured antimatter containment consuming the entire structure in a heartbeat. The shockwave slammed into the Phantom like the fist of an angry god, sending the ship tumbling end over end. Panting, drenched in sweat, Robertson coaxed the ship back under control. A fierce grin split his face as he watched the dissipating flames, the once mighty Kobali weapon reduced to a fading memory. The grin faded as the weight of the war settled back onto his shoulders. The battle was won, but the war ground on. As he plotted a course back to the raging battle over New Terra, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Kobali had more nasty surprises in store for him. As the shockwaves from the destroyed Kobali battle station buffeted the Phantom, Robertson leaned back in his pilot's chair, rubbing his eyes. The sudden chirp of an incoming distress call jolted him from his momentary respite. Mayday, Mayday! This is the Tharsis mining colony. We're under attack by Kobali forces and need immediate assistance. Our defenses can't hold much longer. Robertson's brow furrowed as he analyzed the colony's coordinates. The main human fleet was still embroiled in the battle over New Terra, and the Tharsis colony was on the outer fringes of human space. He was their only hope. Tharsis colony, this is Captain Robertson of the ISS Phantom. I'm en route to your position ETA 10 minutes. Hold tight. He punched the coordinates into the nav computer, the Phantom's engines roaring as it leapt into warp. Stars streaked past the viewports, the ship shuddering as Robertson pushed the reactor to its limits. Dropping out of warp at the edge of the Tharsis system, Robertson's eyes narrowed at the sensor readings. A squadron of Kobali frigates hung in space, their weapons hot and trained on the Phantom. "Her attention, human vessel," a harsh voice crackled over the comms. "This is Kobali Commander Zahn. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Robertson's lips curled into a sneer. "Commander Zahn, this is Captain Robertson. I don't take orders from zealots and butchers. If you want this ship, you'll have to come and take it." He slammed the thrusters to full, the Phantom surging towards the Kobali formation. Plasma bolts sizzled past the cockpit as Robertson juked and weaved, the inertial dampeners straining to compensate. Skimming the hull of the lead frigate, Robertson activated the Phantom's wing-mounted blades. Sparks flew as the razor-sharp edges sliced through the frigate's armor, exposing vital systems. Robertson hammered the trigger, a volley of shells ripping into the frigate's engines. The ship listed and spun, belching fire and debris. The remaining frigates closed in, trying to box the Phantom in with a web of plasma fire. Robertson rolled and looped, always staying one step ahead, pummeling the Kobali ships with precision strikes. One by one, the frigates fell, hulls breached and leaking atmosphere. Angling towards the beleaguered mining colony, Robertson's stomach clenched at the scene below. Kobali soldiers swarmed over the colony's defenses, the flash of energy weapons and the smoke of explosions obscuring the battlefield. The colonists were fighting hard, but the Kobali's numbers were telling. Robertson set the Phantom down on the colony's outskirts, the ship's bulk providing cover for the defenders. Grabbing his sniper rifle, he positioned himself at the airlock, picking off Kobali troopers with clean headshots. The Kobali's advance faltered as soldiers dropped, their comrades searching frantically for the unseen assailant. The colonists rallied, a fierce battle cry rising from their ranks as they surged forward in a desperate counterattack. Caught between the colonists' renewed assault and Robertson's deadly marksmanship, the Kobali strike force crumbled. They fell back in disarray, the colonists harrying them all the way to their landing craft. As the last Kobali ship fled into the sky, the colonists erupted in ragged cheers. Robertson stepped out to meet them, accepting their teary gratitude and heartfelt thanks. But even as he shook hands and clapped shoulders, a nagging thought wormed at the back of Robertson's mind. The Kobali attacks on human mining colonies were increasing in frequency and boldness. There was a pattern here, a purpose he couldn't yet see. Bidding farewell to the colonists, Robertson returned to the Phantom, his jaw set with newfound determination. He would get to the bottom of this mystery, unravel the Kobali's plans. The survival of the human resistance might just depend on it. Firing up the Phantom's engines, Robertson lifted off from the colony, his gaze fixed on the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kobali were plotting their next move, and he would be ready for them. As Robertson piloted the Phantom away from the battered mining colony, his mind raced with the implications of the Kobali's targeted attacks. Something about the pattern nagged at him, a feeling that there was more to their strikes than mere strategic value. He pored over the data, cross-referencing the locations of the attacked colonies with known stellar phenomena and historical records. As the pieces fell into place, Robertson's eyes widened. Each colony was situated near the ruins of an ancient alien civilization, one that had vanished eons ago. Further digging into the fragmentary records of these long-lost aliens revealed tantalizing hints of a powerful technology they had developed, one that could potentially turn the tide of the war. If the Kobali were seeking this technology, Robertson knew he had to act fast. He set course for the nearest set of ruins, located on a desolate, lifeless world. As the Phantom entered orbit, Robertson's scans picked up faint energy signatures deep beneath the planet's surface. Touching down amid the crumbling ruins, Robertson powered up his phase rifle and exited the ship. The ancient structures loomed around him, their once proud facades worn by countless ages. Suddenly a hail of plasma bolts sizzled past his head. Robertson dove for cover as a squad of Kobali soldiers emerged from the shadows, their weapons blazing. But these were no ordinary troops. Their movements were preternaturally quick, their aim uncannily precise. As Robertson traded shots with the Kobali, dancing between the crumbling pillars and shattered walls, he realized with a chill that they seemed to anticipate his every move. They must have been studying this technology for far longer than anyone had suspected. With a grim smile, Robertson tapped his wrist unit. "Phantom, initiate Protocol Omega." Acknowledgement lights winked on his display. It was a desperate gambit, but it might just buy him the edge he needed. Ducking and weaving, Robertson lured the Kobali deeper into the ruins, leading them on a winding path towards the central chamber. As they entered the vaulted space, Robertson lunged for a half-hidden control panel, his fingers flying over the alien glyphs. With a deep thrumming sound, energy fields sprang to life around the room's central plinth, upon which rested a pulsing orb of eldritch light. At the same time, crystalline drones detached from hidden alcoves, whirring towards the Kobali soldiers with deadly intent. In the chaos, Robertson sprinted for the plinth, his hand outstretched for the glowing orb. But a towering figure stepped into his path, a Kobali warrior clad in ornate battle armor, twin plasma blades igniting in his hands. Robertson met the warrior's charge head-on, his own phase blade sparking to life. They clashed in a flurry of blows, the air crackling with ozone as their weapons collided. The Kobali was strong and fast, his technique flawless. But Robertson had a lifetime of battles behind him, and a desperate, unyielding will to win. Fighting left, he ducked under the warrior's guard and struck home, his blade carving through armor and flesh. As the warrior fell, Robertson lunged past him, his fingers closing around the glowing orb. There was a blinding flash, a surge of unimaginable energy coursing through his veins. When his vision cleared, the Kobali warrior lay motionless at his feet, and the chamber was still. Staggering back to the Phantom, the orb cradled in his hands, Robertson could feel its power thrumming through him, enhancing his strength, his speed, his reflexes. With this technology, humanity might finally have a chance to end this war. But as he blasted away from the planet's surface, Robertson knew that the Kobali would never stop hunting him now. The fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders and on the strange, ancient power he now wielded. As Robertson blasted away from the ancient ruins, the mysterious orb's energy surging through his veins, he knew that the tide of the war had irrevocably shifted. The power he now wielded was beyond anything he had ever imagined, and he was determined to use it to end the Kobali threat once and for all. Returning to the front lines, Robertson wasted no time in putting his newfound abilities to the test. In a series of lightning-fast raids, he struck at the heart of the Kobali fleet, his enhanced reflexes and strength allowing him to dance through their defenses like a ghost. Plasma bolts that would have once spelled certain death now merely glanced off his shimmering energy shield, while his own weapons cut through Kobali hulls like a hot knife through butter. The Phantom too seemed imbued with new life, its engines roaring with power, as Robertson pushed it to speeds and maneuvers that should have torn it apart. Together, they were an unstoppable force, a blur of motion and destruction that left nothing but shattered ships and broken bodies in their wake. Word of Robertson's exploits spread like wildfire through the human resistance, and soon every soldier and ship was rallying to his banner. For the first time in years, there was a sense of hope, a feeling that victory might finally be within reach. But the Kobali, ever ruthless, refused to go down without a fight. In a desperate gamble, they launched a massive counterattack, throwing every ship and soldier they had at the human fleet. the void of space lit up with the fire of 1,000 suns as the two sides clashed in a titanic battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. At the heart of the maelstrom, Robertson found himself face to face with a new breed of Kobali warrior, one that seemed to possess the same otherworldly power that now flowed through his own body. They moved with blinding speed and struck with bone-shattering force, their eyes glowing with the same eerie light that emanated from the orb. As Robertson fought against these super soldiers, trading blows that shook the very fabric of space, he felt something stirring within him, a dark and hungry presence that seemed to be feeding on the orb's power. With each passing moment, he could feel it growing stronger, eroding his self-control and turning his thoughts towards violence and destruction. In a moment of startling clarity, Robertson realized that the orb's power was not a gift, but a curse, one that threatened to consume him entirely and turn him into the very thing he had sworn to destroy. He knew then that there was only one way to end this war and save humanity from the orb's corrupting influence. With a heavy heart, Robertson gave the order for the human fleet to fall back, leaving him alone to face the Kobali onslaught. As the ships retreated, he could hear the confused and angry voices of his fellow soldiers over the comm, begging him to reconsider, to let them stand and fight by his side. But Robertson knew that this was a battle he had to face alone. With a final silent prayer, he set the Phantom on a collision course with the heart of the Kobali fleet, the orb's energy building to a crescendo within him. He could feel it surging through every fiber of his being, a searing, blinding light that threatened to burn him away entirely. As the Phantom plunged into the center of the Kobali formation, Robertson closed his eyes, a strange sense of peace washing over him. He knew that this was the end, that there would be no coming back from what he was about to do. And then, in a blinding flash of light that seared itself into the memories of all who witnessed it, the Phantom detonated, the orb's energy consuming Robertson and the entire Kobali fleet in a cataclysmic explosion that seemed to rend the very fabric of space and time. When the dust finally settled, the Kobali were gone, their ships and soldiers reduced to nothing more than atoms drifting in the void. The human fleet, battered and bruised but victorious at last, limped away from the battlefield, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what their victory had cost them. In the years that followed, the story of Robertson's sacrifice would become the stuff of legend, a tale whispered in reverent tones by soldiers and civilians alike. He had given his life not just for the sake of humanity, but for the sake of the galaxy itself, ensuring that the ancient and terrible power of the orb would never again fall into the wrong hands. But for those who had known him best, those who had fought by his side and seen the toll that the war had taken on him, there was a deeper sense of loss, a wound that would never fully heal. They had lost not just a leader, but a friend, a brother in arms who had given everything he had to protect the ones he loved. And yet, even in their grief, they knew that Robertson's legacy would live on, a shining beacon of hope and courage in a universe that all too often seemed consumed by darkness and despair. He had shown them that even in the face of overwhelming odds, even when all seemed lost, there was always a chance for victory, always a reason to keep fighting. As the human fleet set course for home, the stars shining bright in the endless expanse of space, they carried with them the memory of David Robertson, the hero who had saved them all, and the knowledge that as long as his spirit lived on in their hearts, they would never truly be alone. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.